My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I do represent Bauchi Central, Bauchi State. Our commiseration to the deceased families. Mr. President, this is a very sad moment in the history of this country. Although many incidents happen even in developed countries with a better mining equipment, but what happened in the Niger State actually clearly spells dangers, very many dangers across the country because of the rampant illegal mining in this sector. It runs almost everywhere, from Osun to Zamfara to Bauchi to Plateau and several other states. So this underscores the importance of making sure that the government particularly pays attention into the mining sector, because this is just the first one that we're witnessing. And if care is not taken, it will spread all across the country. Because of the situation in the country, because of the hardship, people get into this mining without adequately knowing the repercussion and the danger associated with this kind of illegal mining. So once we put our acts together as a parliament, and thanking the sponsor of the motion, because the right thing must be done. And when the right thing must be done, we minimize the issues of these incidences and we minimize the casualties that will come after it. It is very imperative that the government must pay attention. The mining is taking over farming in the entire scope of northern Nigeria. So therefore, a special attention must be paid to the possible repercussions in the mining sector. I am sure government is bedeviled with serious attention from left, right, and center. And therefore, it is important that this motion is taken seriously, and it is imperative that this motion should not just be limited to what you discussed on the floor. The Committee on Legislative Compliance must be able to make sure that something is done and done timely, so that before other things happen in other domains, this particular matter is nipped in the bud and making sure that these bodies are first recovered. I think it is disheartening that these miners are still trapped. That means the whole issue of mining as a country, we are not ready for it. Where mining is seen as a pastime, like in South Africa, in Australia, there is no way people will be allowed to be trapped for up to 12 to 24 hours. But 4 days down the line, these miners are there. I'm sure by the time you reach them, you only find bones at the end of the day. And that is not good for this country. And I'm sure we will do everything possible. The government must do everything possible in making sure that this thing doesn't happen. And if it happens, there must be a remedy whereby bodies or people that are involved have gotten some way out of the rubbles, because it is really disheartening. Families of these people don't even know whether these people are dead. They are just presumed dead hypothetically, but because nobody sees the body, nobody could reach them, so it is neither here nor there. So I support this motion. I should be seen to be a very serious motion, and it should be supported by all and sundry in this chamber. Thank you.
So, Senator Delta.
I rise to support this bill reluctantly. This is about the fervent motions on this particular matter under the Senate. Mr. President, it is alarming, disturbing, and tragic that we're still talking about these matters now. First, we have the best trained army on the continent of Africa. We have the most equipped army on the continent of Africa. We have recorded successes outside the shores of Nigeria, in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in Somalia, in Darfur, and other United Nations peacekeepers. Our army, at every given this peacekeeping mission, comes out successfully tough. Mr. President, let me also say that there is this kind of understanding that the entire bandits in this country are between 5 to 10,000 in population. And here we are, 10,000 bandits have made the life of 250 million Nigerians impossible. Therefore, what do we need to do? First of all, we must create this up. There has to be faith, commitment to this. And how do you do that? It is my opinion that while the president is appointing the chief of army staff, the inspector general of police, and the head of these security agencies, there must be a commitment and a contract with a time frame. How do you go? I'm appointing you chief of staff, national security advisor, inspector general of police, and I give you timelines in making sure that in the next 2-3 months, I don't want to hear of any banditry. And the security agencies will now, on the other hand, give the president their requirements for them to be able to succeed. Mr. President, as you sit there, even though I'm not from the Northwest, my part of the country is also affected. But what you hear about complicity of some security personnel disturbs me. Mr. President, there was a time that over 20 vehicles in Zamfara were asked to pursue these bandits. But there was also an order that all you do is to scare them and don't shoot them. Scare them, let them run away, but don't shoot them. You hear some of these things times and times and times again. You get involved with some of these security chaps. Certainly, sir, as the leader or leaders of this chamber, you need to sit down with Mr. President. The whole truth is that he doesn't have the vital information that he needs to act. The information that the security agencies probably are not competent, or they're afraid, or there is complicity. And therefore, all we need to do is to match this with timelines. Give them what they want, but give them timelines to achieve it. Once people know that they're going to lose their positions, they will act. But so far, this thing is so common. Nothing will happen. You ask people to go and do their assignment, they don't succeed in them. They come back and they continue to do the same thing all the time. It is disturbing that if we don't take care, sir, finally, sir, I see a situation whereby one of these states' mission could be taken over by bandits in the government house. If care is not taken, the way these things are going on, I raise my case. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those, members of the security agencies that we have in this country that are not doing what they are supposed to do, or they are not doing well. But majority of them are doing very well, and they have put their life on the line to safeguard us, to ensure security in our country. It's a problem, it's a national problem, and it's something that has global dimension. Terrorism has global dimension. It's something that, a problem that other countries are also facing. But from the posture of Mr. President, from what he's doing, I'm sure it will be a matter of time that this problem will be surmounted. Senator Ereti Kingibe, you have the floor.
And I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Mr. President, I second this proposed amendment. And in addition to that, Mr. President, let me concur with the submission of the Senate leader. And let me say it is apt for the committee to come back to the Senate for it to resolve some of the issues that were actually raised on these particular matters, particularly the issues of the nomenclature of the equalization, the petroleum equalization fund to downstream petrol regulatory agency, from DPR to downstream petroleum regulatory authority, and from NMA to maritime administration. Hitherto, when an ad hoc committee is created and is given this assignment, quite a number of times the ad hoc committee takes its resolve to continue to do what it likes, and imagining maybe the Senate will understand. But the powers does not belong to the ad hoc committee, it belongs to the Senate. So therefore it is apt that the ad hoc committee decides to bring back this particular matter so that it gets its powers ab initio from the Senate, so that whoever is dealing with this particular matter will know this is a resolution of the Senate, not that of the ad hoc committee. And I think it is something that is very germane in our legislature.
Thank you. I don't think there's any debate on, there's need for any debate on these.
Dr. Abdul Ningi, representing Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Mr. President, this is a very, very much commendable out-of-box thinking, and of course, by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance. It is imperative that we have a lot of problems in this country, and that we have been so lackadaisical in calling to some of these issues at hand. In particular, the 2004 provision has not been able to capture the essence and the stability of the foreign exchange in our country. The foreign exchange, as adequately canvassed by the appropriation committee chairman, has been left in tatters. Nobody seems to be in control. Now, you begin to wonder, is it the law that is the problem, or is it the implementers of the law that is the problem? By reading through the submissions of this bill, you begin to see some gaps that were actually created after the 2004 bill that was passed into law by the National Assembly. So therefore, it is important to begin to look at these gaps and to close them. However, I do not think the law at second reading is sufficient enough to be able to give us a very clear indication of where we're going. This particular law has to be subjected to a series of public hearings so that experts from all over Nigeria and beyond will be able to come and give us their own mindset. Part of the problem we have been having is that where we try to do this law for the good of the citizens, but at the background, there are people who are well educated, they are trying to take the opportunity in looking at these gaps and try to play around and manipulate it. So it is important that we pass this law to second reading, but equally important that we must subject it to rigorous public hearing, so that at the end of the day, what you are going to receive is a fair representation and acceptance by Nigerians. I so support this bill.
Is this Senator Yaya?
Emirates. In fact, Laya is just in between the two local governments of Ningi Emirates. And the story of Laya is so disturbing that the entire town almost deserted. And quite a number of them have taken refuge in some neighboring states and a local government. I don't know why the state government, the local government in particular, have not taken action to bring some palliatives to the Laya town. I know the federal government is big, but I think what is important most often when such disasters happen is for the immediate local government and the state government to take action. In the case of Laya, we've had very terrible stories, and that schools have been shut, children are no longer going to school, and even the farming. I know this is the farming season. The people in Laya now can go to farm, but they can't come back to their houses because there are no houses. So they have taken refuge in other local governments. I don't know at the end of the day what will happen. And the mover of the motion made a very serious statement about foretelling disasters in Nigeria. I think this is something that is of a national importance. Of course, sometimes you hear that there will be flooding in Akwa Ibom, there will be flooding in Bauchi, but that is to the extent of the information. But where it concerns communities, little communities, you hear none of it. This flooding is ravaging the entire northern Nigeria. And if it doesn't happen in Jigawa today, it will happen in Bauchi. But also Lagos has also taken its own hit. So in the entire country that is at loggerhead. Unfortunately, Mr. President, this flooding is happening at a very critical, bad time in the history of this country with the hunger ravaging people. So you find out, where do people go? No food to eat, no house to stay, flood has taken over, and no farm to farm because of the incessant insecurity in some part of the country. So I think I have seen this motion throughout last week, and I want to thank you, Mr. President, for allowing him to come up with this motion. This motion has been listed in the audit paper for this is the third time. So I commend you in allowing him to take this matter so that people of Laya will know that the Senate means business, and the Senate has seen their plight through the representative of Laya Town. I crave the indulgence of my colleagues to see the Laya motion as being part and an integral part of humanity, our own common humanity going forward. And I support this motion, and it should go through. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished colleagues.
The very financial mind that the sponsor of the bill intends to make. Mr. President, you recall in the 70s and 80s, while we were very young people, insurance was almost at par with banking. But over the last 2-3 decades, insurance has lost steam. Nigerians, on the average, don't even understand what is insurance. Nigerians, on the average, don't trust insurance. It is left in the hands of very few people who hardly make available information as to the need of and importance of insurance. And you recall, Mr. Senate President, globally speaking, one of the cardinal bedrock of economic development is, of course, insurance. And therefore, if you look at the development, even within the African continent, look at South Africa, look at Egypt, one of their mainstay of why the economy is so galvanized is actually insurance. And I am very positive, in consonance with a lot of speakers about this particular bill. This is one bill that will offshoot the name of the National Assembly and the Senate in particular. And I believe when we pass this into a second reading and take it to public hearing, it will galvanize insurance as an industry. It will showcase the importance of insurance, and people from out and within will be able to now say, we understand the importance of insurance, and people will now come to invest in making sure that insurance become what it used to be in the last 3 decades ago. So I believe everybody that is seated here should support this bill because it's important, it's germane, it's apt, and it's timely. Thank you very much. Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central, Bauchi State. Mr. President, by my practice in the parliament and my personal spirit, I hardly speak against a bill prepared by a member of the Senate or the House. And you recall, I was the chairman Niger Delta crisis in the House for 3 very good years. And I was also involved in presenting to the House then the issue of amnesty to the Niger Delta. I was also a co-sponsor of the Niger Delta Development Corporation. So everything about me is Niger Delta, true and true, except that I'm not from there. I've been to Niger Delta through crannies several times in the course of my assignment as a legislator. And I had cause also to also visit some European countries, all on the issue of making sure that Niger Delta gets its fair dues. Having said that, I look at the bill and I look at the objectives of this bill. For me, when you take, nobody is on the chair, so let me tarry a while. So when you take the NDDC law and try to compare it with the laws presented here, there are no difference at all. There are no difference. So I would like the sponsor of the bill, even though he's not here, by some of my friends from the Niger Delta here, it is important that this bill is stood down for further consultation, because I don't want us to go out with a reasoning that some of us are against Niger Delta, and far from that. I want this particular bill, in my opinion, stood down, and then we consult amongst ourselves, and then possibly come up with any amendment, like suggested by Senator Alero, on the NDDC bill, so that we give them what they desire, we give them what they deserve, because they deserve much more than what they are getting. It is important for me to say that on record, but it is not right, after having these intervention programs, to now come up with another one. It makes people feel as if something is amiss. I beg that this bill stood down, that Suko and Co, some of us will put our heads together and come up with a solution to this program. I think that is, in my opinion, that is the best way going forward.
So, distinguished
Abdul, and I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Mr. President, let me say I am in full support of the provision to extend this budget to 2024 December. That is, of course, in tandem with the sweeping powers or near sweeping powers of the Parliament in the Constitution under powers and control of public funds. Section 80, 82, Section 80, sub 2, sub 3, and sub 4 has clearly demonstrated the powers of the National Assembly to prescribe into law how government money in the consolidated revenue is disseminated. Section 3 further also told us about how the National Assembly should make laws whereby monies actually comes out from the public funds. So the entire Section 80 inherently giving powers for us to do what we are asked to do. But as a pointer to that, it is important that this should not be becoming a normal procedure within the appropriation year period. It is important to understand we've started last year, and we need to put a thinking cap in making sure that this doesn't repeat itself in the subsequent years ahead. What I'm trying to say, this should not be seen as a normal, but it is necessary at this point in time because of the paucity of funds coming into the government revenues, and because of the near need as an emergency to the citizens of this country, in making sure that we allow this extension to move forward. Because all we do here is to represent the people and the people's interests, and the issue of technicalities, when it comes to fighting insecurity, when it comes to fighting hunger, should not be the reason why we turn down this resolution fully and well canvassed by the Senate leader. So I think it is important we do that. Lastly, it is important to also look at the last comment, which you have also alluded to it, whereby at the end of the financial year, some projects are not implemented. The financial bill has given us the right to carry it forward to the incoming year. That's what you call carry forward. And then it should be implemented, it should be joined with that next year's budget. It is important, lastly, sir, that the chairman of appropriation, the chairman of finance, should be able to make sure that before December, that this particular inputs are actually implemented. And if for any reason the government could not do that, they should report back to the National Assembly for discussion. It is important that we do that. Even as we are doing that, we do not know of what percentage has the supplementary budget been implemented. We need to know the percentage. We need to know how many remaining to be able to have a 100% implementation. I think it is the right move, and the Parliament should be able to give its note to this particular request. I so submit.
Distinguished Senator Ningi, I think you've done clear elucidation. Where we are considering the appropriation bill for 2025, the committees on finance, the committees on appropriation, the committees on all the other organs that make up the budget process should be able to ask questions. And if, for any reason, some of these projects are not concluded or fully implemented, then they should submit the level of implementation, and we should include it in the next year's budget as ongoing and appropriate accordingly. That way there will be no need to think of extension. I think that's the proper thing to do. Senator Wadada, you have something to add?
Yes, thank you very much.
Eyes catch your mind. My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central. Mr. President, this is a very, very, very important law. And looking at the global phenomenon today, the name of the game is e-commerce. All over the world, transactions are made electronics. And those nations that have refused to tally with what the world bargains lives to fight another day, and they live to regret it. Compilation of laws. The compilation of the laws has to do with every segment that the law at present has not captured. If you look at Kaka's bill, it brings to bear the gaps that the present laws have actually not met. As a lawyer, I'm sure he has taken his time to do this research. And the best thing for us as a parliament is to take this bill to the second reading. It is there that I'm sure interested public participants will be called to look at it, revisit it, and bring possible amendments to it. So I believe this is a very important bill that the Senate President and this chamber should encourage. Thank you. Directorate, the compliance unit of all government agencies have not been able to be given the wherewithal to be able to do its job professionally and then competently and legislatively speaking. I think when you go through the lead debate, you take it from me that the compliance mechanism of this country is at its lowest ebb over the years, and therefore bringing about the establishment of an institute will actually resonate with the global best practices. It is important that distinguished senators sit down, look at it thoroughly, and you know there are more positives in this particular law than the negative. In fact, there is very little negative about it. So it is important that we recognize it because the whole life is dynamic. As we are moving into the 22nd century, things are going to evolve, things are going to change, and therefore, when we pass a law like this, we are making it readily available for incoming generations to be able to meet the expectation of the global phenomena, meet the expectation of the global competition. I think this is the right bill, and I hope our colleagues should be able to see it as it is. It is done, it is something that should be supported, and I give my full support on this particular matter. I so submit. Mr. President, my name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Mr. President, my point of order is Order 42, and by your leave, may I read? And it reads as follows. By the indulgence of the Senate and the leave of the Senate President, a senator may make a personal explanation, although there be no question before the Senate. But no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may any debate arise upon the explanation.
But please repeat that part. No what?
No controversial matter.
No controversial matter. No controversial matter
may be brought forward.
No controversial matter may be brought forward.
No any debate may arise from the explanation. The terms of the proposed statement shall be submitted in details to the President of the Senate when his leave to make it thought. Mr. President, just last Tuesday, the 1st of June, I was in faraway Istanbul, in Turkey, when I got a news alert that the Senate bears resolution and called me to come back and continue the business of legislation. It is therefore my resolve to, with a profound humility, to Allah, the sustainer and the cherisher, thanking him for giving us this day and for finding it fit enough, for finding time to be with you once again. And I would like to commend the Senate for this gesture. And I would like especially to commend the Senate President for the kind words you have expressed that day about me. Commend the leadership of the minority. Also commend the adult committee of the Senate, my brother colleagues who have been to my residence, those who have called, a lot of Nigerians across party spectrum from all facets of life, my governor and the people of Bauchi State, especially my constituents and everybody who came to commiserate with me. I have been in this National Assembly for almost 2 decades, and I think I'm looking at this assembly as my home, my abode. Having been here, served as the House Leader, Deputy Senate Leader, and I'm very positive, proud of what you have done, proud of what I have done this far. So I would like to thank everybody. And for me, I said, it is time to move on. It is gratifying that I'm here, and I'm back with the senators in the Senate chamber. Thank you very much.
No debate may arise from it. So let me thank distinguished Senator Ningi for his kind words to the Senate, the leadership and members, and also thank the senators for welcoming you back and taking a unanimous decision to call you back from Turkey. I believe that you have a lot to contribute to the 10th Senate. I believe you are a very resourceful senator. And like you said, let bygone be bygone. So you are welcome. We welcome you back with gratitude.
Point of order, sir.
My name is Senator Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central. Mr. President, let me join you and others in commending Senator Asuko for a well-researched, eloquently delivered, brilliantly presented motion on this particular matter. It is important, Mr. President, to highlight the summary of this motion. And the summary of this motion precisely gives us the tragic history, the tragic history of Nigeria as a nation. As an oil-producing nation for 50 years or thereabout, this nation is still battling with the issue of auditing, the issue of sampling, and the issue of fault validation. In other climes across the world, these are given, but because we're a nation that has not shown any capacity, any seriousness, especially in this sector that we all depend on. And that's why we're having issues within the industry. Finally, Mr. President, if this is what the 10th Senate will achieve in its 4 years existence going forward, if this is the only thing that the 10th Senate will achieve, please, for God's sake, let's try to achieve it. Let's show Nigerians that is not business as usual. Let's understand the perception outside there. Let's do what you can do and do everything in the open to satisfy skeptics about the 10th Senate. It is important that we recognize the issues raised. And it is very imperative that once we can achieve the objectives of this motion, I am sure history will recall the 10th Senate as an achiever. It is important for those who will be in this ad committee to understand Nigerians have a question mark about what we can do or we cannot do. But sufficiently, the Constitution has given us powers to be able to delve into issues like this and bring about positive change and positive transformation. I so move, and I think everybody should support this motion. It is not late in coming. It is imperative that we understand the dynamics as it is. It is important to make a difference, and it is important to show Nigerians that we meant what we said. Thank you very much.
Senator Olamileko.
By Senator Dickett. I would like to say the tragedy in St. School in Buzabuji, in Jos Metropolis, has become too many. Mr. President, I was in Jos over the weekend, and because of the tragedy, I had the cause to visit the terrible site in Saint School. And the gory picture of the collapsed building and the incessant cries by the families of the bereaved almost brought some of us that were there to tears. Mr. President, you just imagine that you wake up in the morning very happy to send your child to school, and mid-afternoon, they reported that that child is no more. And you probably did not even see him that day. Probably you went to work, and that's the end. And this tragedy happened when the students were writing exams and trying to decipher and trying to get more explanation at that site. We found out, sadly, that there were signals that that building was collapsing. And therefore, in my opinion, the governor was in UK that time, but he had to cancel everything and return shortly after to commensurate with the family. A proper panel has been set up. My prayer, Mr. Senate President, is that this probe panel should not be a typical Nigerian probe panel where probes are made and consequently at the end of the day, nothing actually comes out of the probe. This probe set up by the governor should be thorough and professional, and anybody, no matter how highly placed in that society or community, found to be negligent to the cause of these kids. None of these kids who are told was more than 18, and that is terrible. And therefore, any person found to be negligent in either the master plan, the owner of the school, I think should not be spared. And I think it is important that all of us as parents, all of us as Nigerian citizens should commiserate with the families of the bereaved and pray that that should never ever happen in this country again. I so second.
Yes. Is it in connection with this debate?